Welcome to American Medicine Today. As we continue to social distance, I'm joined by Ethan Euchre. Now, around March 13th, the world paused and an unprecedented global reset started. A new documentary explores the day-to-day experiences of families, individuals struggling and succeeding through COVID-19 pandemic. Joining us is Abbey LeVine, Emmy-nominated director of the new film, COVID POV. Thank you for being with us, Abbey.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Tell us about the perspective. Where did the idea come from and how did you decide to pull that off?
The idea came to me when I realized that there was probably going to be no other time in history where we would all be home without access to each other at any other point in time. So for a couple of reasons, I wanted to document this time in history. And I do just want to say that there was a team of about 22 remote filmmakers, most of whom I had never met, all female. And we started taking submissions remotely. We got 71 contributors to send in videos over the course of the first 60 days.
How did you winnow it down and vet who would be a good subject for the film?
We actually started with friends and family because we thought, well, we all know interesting people, and really that's the genesis of a lot of documentary and television is we kind of start having conversations. We're all very curious by nature, and we wanted to make sure we captured a very diverse group of Americans, both in age, in race, in gender, and also what they were experiencing.
Well, what were some of those more interesting stories that you were able to document?
So we have Keisha, who when we meet her, she's an African-American who is 36 weeks pregnant and thought she was going to have this big birth with her family present. It's her first child. She knows she's having a boy. She lives in California, and she also has a female partner. So there's a lot of this story that we really like that we wanted to dig into. In addition, Keisha's a social worker who stands on behalf of pregnant women often. And so we track her very unusual birth, and for sure, this pandemic changed everything about her birth and the beginning of her family.
Wow, I can't even imagine trying to go through regular pregnancy if you don't have your family with you. I can't even imagine what that would be like, let alone with this pandemic lingering.
You know, this is a time capsule. This documentary is a time capsule so that we can show future generations what happened. And luckily, we have incredible technology. I mean, iPhones and smartphones film incredibly now. You know, most techies, I think, know that 4K and is pretty high quality video. So I think we got very lucky with that. So we're really trying to craft this in a way that is insular to the storytelling of the people. So it's not a film about a pandemic necessarily. It's the storytelling of what's going on within everybody's home during a pandemic.
The fact that the technology nowadays is so great. I mean, we had a guest on our show a couple of years ago, back in 2018, talking about, the book was called Pandemic, and it was about the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. And there's a handful of photos in there, you know, all grainy, black and white, with people in masks. It was weird to see the parallels, but also the fact that it wasn't well documented because it was over 100 years ago by this time. So yeah, it's pretty interesting just to see the fact that 100 years from now, people will really get to see a firsthand POV account of what everyone was going through.
I think it's really important to be able to have that. I mean, being a documentary filmmaker and somebody who's always digging through archival footage to see what happened before us, just like from a philosophical standpoint even, to be able to capture this is, it's been a silver lining and a gift. It also brought us all, it was very cathartic for all of us participating and the contributors to be able to do something creative and worthwhile during the beginning days of the pandemic, so we didn't focus on panicking.
Have any of these individuals taken any medications prophylactically to try and ward off ever getting sick?
We don't have any participants who have participated in any studies.
Is there any talk about a sequel? I think you kind of hinted at that before during our radio interview.
I always had this magical ending in my mind when we started on March 13th. I thought, that it would be everybody stepping out of their door and into the sunlight, and it's like, we're free. And of course, that hasn't happened yet. So we talked about, originally this was going to be a 30-day, we were going to track people for 30 days, and then we decided to do it for 60 days. And so now we did decide to stop at 60 days. And we are staying in touch with all of our contributors, especially the top 20. And we'll see what happens. We're going to get through this one first, but I'm going to say yes. This is going to be so successful that people are going to be begging for more stories.
Obviously, you don't want to give away the ending of the current film, but I mean, how do you tie all that together?
Everybody in their individual stories has a specific story arc that is original to them. And how we wanted to tell these stories was that this is this person's POV for this particular 60 days. And I think what's interesting about it is that we didn't know that it was going to all go on for so long. So at some point, this will also be a documentary that we can look back on and say, remember when, right? We're going to be able to show this to our children and future generations and say, can you believe that we were hoarding toilet paper? Can you believe that we couldn't find sanitizer? And can you believe that we really aren't getting too political, but there are a couple smaller political contributors in there as well. Where we did cut this off was the Black Lives Matter movement started, and we said, are we going to get into that during this? Because it did affect several of our contributors, and we decided no. We decided that was a separate topic, and this was something that we needed to actually just keep doing as a health piece.
Almost every year on 9/11, I find myself rewatching these documentaries. I talk with friends and coworkers who I was with when it happened. It's like you said, it's a time capsule. It's a snapshot of the people who lived it.
We have collectively, as humans, all lived through something together, and there's something really special about that. It never in the history of the world, I don't think, have all of us lived through something together. So this film could be shown in France and Mexico, in Asia, anywhere, to see what Americans were doing. We do have some international contributors, which at this time, we're not editing in, but we plan on having a pretty extensive 360-degree rollout for this on social media. And we are planning on including some international contributors as well.
Okay, and where can people see this film? You just mentioned social media.
Right now, if people want to take a look at what we've been doing so far, they can go to our Instagram, which is at COVID POV, POV, point of view. And our Facebook page also is COVID POV. And we're in talks with some great distribution companies about where people will be able to see this soon.
Thank you so much, Abbey LeVine. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you for being on to discuss your documentary, COVID POV.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Ethan.
Make sure you stay tuned. Coming up after the break, a story of recovery.